The fire crackled and danced beneath a sky of endless stars. Around it, a circle of wide-eyed children huddled close, their breath visible in the cool night air. An old storyteller, his face lined with age and wisdom, leaned forward, his voice low and steady, drawing them in with every word. "There was once," he began, "a girl so kind, so pure, that even the earth envied her." He let the words hang in the air, the children holding their breath. The old man's gaze swept across their eager faces, a knowing glimmer in his eye. "But remember this, little ones, when envy stirs in the hearts of men, it can turn deadly." The flames flickered, casting long shadows across the storyteller's weathered features. His voice dropped lower still, barely above a whisper. "This is no tale of princes or riches. No, this is a story of pain, of betrayal, and of something far more powerful than revenge." Suddenly the scene shifted. In the flicker of the firelight, the image of a young girl appeared, ragged, trembling. Her skin was torn and blistered, wounds oozing a strange, golden sap. And from beneath the broken flesh, something unnatural began to grow, vines, glistening and alive, winding their way along her battered arms, blooming with eerie, glowing flowers. The children gasped, shrinking closer to one another. The storyteller's voice rose above the crackle of the flames. They poured hot ashes on her skin, but what grew from her wounds was no longer human. A heavy silence fell, broken only by the wind rustling through the trees. The story had begun. The village of Ntari lay beneath a relentless sun, the cracked earth thirsty for rain that had not come in many seasons. The once lush fields were now barren, their brittle stalks trembling beneath the weight of the wind. The river that had once fed the land was now a thin, sluggish stream, winding through a dry bed of stones. Hunger gnawed at the bellies of the villagers and weariness dulled their eyes. It was a harsh land where hope withered as quickly as the crops. In this unforgiving place lived a girl named Ao. She was no more than 16, slight of frame, with skin the deep, rich hue of the earth itself, and eyes like the wide sky after a storm. Orphaned as a child, Ao had been taken in by her aunt, Mama Koba, a woman known as much for her bitterness as for her skill with herbs, and by her cousin, Nia, a girl of sharp beauty and sharper tongue. Ao worked tirelessly in Mama Koba's small herb garden, tending the plants that struggled to grow in the poor soil. She gathered water from the shrinking stream, cleaned the tiny mud and thatch house, and cooked simple meals from what little the land still provided. But it was not her labor that drew the attention of the villagers, it was her gift. Whispers had long surrounded Ao. When a calf was born weak and dying, it was Ao who would lay her slender hands upon its trembling body, murmuring soft words. When she withdrew, the calf would stand strong and sure. Sickly plants left in her care would flourish where others failed. A wilting flower would bloom bright once more beneath her touch. Some said she was blessed by the spirits of the forest. Others murmured that her mother had been a healer, and Ao had inherited her gift. But in a land so starved for miracles, few questioned such wonders for long. They simply came, farmers with their failing goats, mothers with fevered children, old women with aching joints. And Ao, with her gentle hands and quieter heart, did what she could. Yet not all saw her gift with gratitude. Mama Koba watched with narrowed eyes as more and more villagers came seeking Ao's help instead of her own bitter brews. Where once Mama Koba had been revered for her knowledge of roots and leaves, now she was merely the aunt of the girl with the healing touch. Each visit, each whispered word of praise for Ao, fanned the flames of jealousy in her heart. And then there was Nia. Where Ao was soft-spoken and kind, Nia was fierce and proud. Her beauty was undeniable, smooth skin, dark eyes, and a voice that could sway any young man. But no charm of hers could rival the quiet reverence that surrounded Ao. Nia's suitors often found themselves speaking of the girl with the strange gift, and each time Nia's smile grew colder. Within the small house, Ao's days were filled with endless work, her nights with fitful dreams. She bore her aunt's harsh words and Nia's cruel jests in silence, her heart too gentle to return bitterness with bitterness. The only comfort she found was in the quiet moments among the plants, her fingers brushing soft leaves, her spirit somehow connected to the life pulsing beneath the earth. But even Ao, with all her kindness, could not see the darkness gathering around her. In the hearts of those closest to her, envy festered. And in a land where the soil had forgotten how to give life, such envy could only grow. It did not take long for word of Ao's gift to spread beyond the dusty paths of Ntari. Farmers from neighboring villages began to arrive, driven by desperation. They brought sick animals, wilted plants, and stories of ailments that no root or potion could cure. One by one they came to the small house where Ao lived in quiet servitude, seeking the girl whose touch seemed to hold life itself. And one by one, they left astonished. Cattle once thought beyond saving stood strong, chickens began to lay once more, fields that had shriveled began to show new green. Each success added to Ao's growing reputation. Soon even the village elders began to take notice. When the chief's wife fell ill with a wasting fever, it was not Mama Koba they summoned but Ao. The girl came humbly, head bowed, and with gentle hands wiped the woman's brow, whispering softly as though speaking to the very spirit of the illness. Within days the chief's wife rose from her bed, her strength returning like the long-forgotten rains. The people of Ntari were awed. They spoke of her in the market, around cooking fires, beneath the shade of ancient baobab trees. They called her the gentle healer. But not all voices were kind. Among the whispers of wonder came other murmurs, low, sharp-edged words born of envy. She uses charms, some said. No girl heals like that without dark spirits. Beware her touch, she is no child of the gods but of something else entirely. Mama Koba did not try to silence these rumors. Instead she fanned them quietly. Her once thriving trade had dwindled, fewer came to her for cures. Where her hut had once bustled with villagers seeking salves and potions, now it stood quiet, its shelves thick with unsold wares. Each day that passed, each person who knelt before Ao instead of her, deepened the bitterness in her heart. Fools, she spat to Nia one night, her voice a harsh whisper in the dim glow of their cooking fire. They praise her but they do not know what she is. Nia too had her own reasons to hate. Among the young men of the village was Kofi, a proud, handsome boy with a sharp wit and an easy smile. He had long been Nia's chosen suitor, a match that Mama Koba had quietly encouraged. Yet lately Kofi's eyes strayed. Whenever Ao passed through the market, head low, basket in hand, Kofi's gaze followed her. Once he had spoken to her, a simple greeting, a small kindness, but to Nia, it was a great insult. She bewitched him, Nia hissed later, her hands clenched tight. She pretends to be meek but she is a serpent. Mama Koba nodded, her eyes gleaming. The two women, their hearts alike in envy, began to whisper long into the nights. In the market the gossip thickened. She's a witch, one old woman said. I saw her alone by the river talking to the trees. I heard the spirits visit her hut at night, another added. She must be using charms. And through it all Ao remained unaware. She spent her days as she always had, working quietly, tending to the sick, helping where she could. She noticed the sidelong glances, the sudden silences when she approached, but she said nothing. Her heart, too gentle to imagine the malice growing around her, believed only in kindness. But Mama Koba watched. She saw the perfect storm rising, the jealousy of her daughter, the envy of the villagers, the hunger for someone to blame when the rain still refused to fall. And in her bitter heart, a plan began to take shape. One that would rid them of Ao once and for all. The night of the harvest festival arrived, one of the few times when even the harsh land of Ntari seemed to soften. Though the rains had been scarce, the villagers gathered to give thanks for what little they had. Fires burned high in the village square, drums beat a steady rhythm into the star-filled sky, and the scent of roasted yams and spiced stew drifted on the breeze. For one night, laughter replaced the weariness etched into every face. Ao moved quietly through the crowd, her basket filled with wildflowers she had gathered earlier that day. The flames danced in her dark eyes as she watched the others celebrate, her own heart lightened for the first time in many moons. Though she stood apart from the dancers, many greeted her warmly, mothers whose children she had healed, elders whose aching bones had found relief beneath her touch. But in the shadows beyond the firelight, two figures watched her with cold, calculating eyes. She thinks herself loved, Nia hissed beneath her breath, her gaze never leaving Ao. Let her smile now. She will not smile for long. Mama Koba's expression was dark. It ends tonight, she said. The fools will see what she truly is. Their plan had been set for days. The old shed at the edge of the compound, once used to store herbs and firewood, stood empty now, its door heavy and solid. The villagers, lost in music and drink, would pay no mind to what happened beyond the circle of light. When the moon hung high, casting a silver glow across the dusty ground, Mama Koba approached Ao with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Child, she said sweetly, come. I need your help. I have forgotten a bundle of herbs in the shed. The elders asked for them tonight. Ao, ever dutiful, nodded. Of course, Auntie. Nia joined them, her arms slipping around Ao's shoulder with false affection. Come, sister, she whispered. It won't take but a moment. Together, they led her away from the music and laughter, down a narrow path toward the darkened shed. The air grew colder, the sounds of the festival fading behind them. Ao felt a shiver creep along her spine, but she brushed it away. Mama Koba opened the door, the hinges groaning softly. Inside, child. The bundle is near the back. Ao stepped inside, peering through the gloom. Before she could turn, there was a sharp shove from behind. She stumbled forward, then heard the door slam shut with a heavy thud. "Auntie?" she called, confusion rising in her voice. She tried the handle but it would not budge. "Nia?" Outside, Mama Koba and Nia worked quickly. A thick wooden beam was dropped across the door, sealing it tight. They exchanged a glance, then hurried to the nearby hearth, where a large iron pot already hung over a roaring fire. Inside the pot, ashes, collected from weeks of fires, bitter with the scent of old herbs, had been heated until they glowed faintly red. Smoke curled from the edges as Mama Koba stirred the mixture with a heavy stick. "Ready?" she whispered. Together they carried the pot toward the shed. The door was cracked open just enough for their purpose. Ao's voice rose in panic now. "Please? Let me out. What have I done?" But her pleas fell on deaf ears. Mama Koba began to chant, her voice low and venomous. "Let beauty turn to filth, let life turn to death." Nia took up the words, her tone sharp with hatred. "Let beauty turn to filth, let life turn to death." And with a swift motion they tipped the pot forward. Ao barely had time to scream before the searing ashes rained down upon her, burning, blistering, seeping into her skin. Pain unlike any she had ever known consumed her. Her cries echoed into the night, muffled by the thick walls of the shed. Outside, Mama Koba and Nia watched with grim satisfaction. By dawn, Mama Koba said coldly, "She will be dead. And the village will be free of her curse." With that, they turned and walked away, leaving the girl writhing in agony beneath a blanket of smoldering ash. The festival drums pounded in the distance, oblivious to the horror unfolding at the edge of the darkness. Days passed beneath the relentless sun. The festival ended, and the village of Ntari returned to its weary routine. Yet in the far corner of Mama Koba's compound, the old shed remained sealed. A heavy beam still barred the door. No sound had come from within since that terrible night. Rumors began to ripple through the village. Some whispered they had heard faint cries on the wind, others claimed to have seen shadows moving beneath the door. But none dared approach, not even Mama Koba or Nia. "She is gone," Mama Koba said sharply when asked. "The spirits have claimed her." But doubt lingered. And fear. For though no one would say it aloud, a deep unease had settled over Ntari. Chickens refused to roost near the shed. Dogs howled at night. The air itself felt thick with something unseen. After 3 long days, the village elders, urged by worried whispers, gathered to confront what had been left unspoken. Led by Elder Bakery, the oldest and most respected among them, they made their way to Mama Koba's compound beneath the noonday sun. A crowd followed at a distance, too afraid to draw close but unwilling to look away. The shed loomed before them, its timbers darkened by smoke, the air heavy with the scent of old ash and something stranger still, a faint, sweet perfume that seemed to drift from within. With a grim nod, Elder Bakery motioned to 2 strong men. Together they lifted the beam and forced open the door. What they saw within stopped them cold. Ao lay crumpled on the dirt floor, her skin raw and blistered, her once beautiful face marred by burns. Yet from those terrible wounds strange things had begun to emerge. Thin green vines coiled along her arms and legs, their surfaces slick with moisture. Tiny blossoms, pale green and faintly glowing, bloomed from the cracks in her skin. Where her blood should have run, a thick golden sap oozed slowly, pooling on the ground beneath her. And wherever that sap touched, the parched earth seemed to drink it greedily, small shoots of fresh grass pushing through the dust. The elders stood in stunned silence. The gathered villagers, peering from behind trees and fences, gasped in horror. She lives," one woman whispered, clutching her child close. "But look what she has become," another muttered. "This is no gift. It is a curse." Slowly Ao's eyes fluttered open. Pain clouded her gaze, but beneath it burned something deeper, something ancient and powerful. She tried to speak, but her voice was little more than a ragged breath. Elder Bakery stepped forward, his face grave. "Child, what has been done to you?" Ao could not answer. Her gaze fell instead to her arms, to the vines that curled along her blackened skin. Horror and wonder warred within her. Behind the elders, Mama Koba and Nia stood in the shadows, their faces pale. "She is cursed," Mama Koba said loudly, seizing the moment. The spirits warned us. Look at her, this thing she has become. The crowd murmured in agreement. Fear twisted their faces. None could deny what their eyes beheld, yet none wished to believe it was born of their own cruelty. Elder Bakery looked long at Ao. His heart wavered. He saw not a monster but a girl broken and suffering. Yet the will of the people was strong, their fear louder than compassion. This is no place for such a one, he said at last, voice heavy with sorrow. If she remains here, the village will know only misfortune. Ao's breath caught. Her battered body trembled. Take her, the elder commanded, to the edge of the forest. There, let the spirits decide her fate. A murmur of assent rippled through the crowd. Mama Koba's eyes gleamed with triumph. Nia looked away, unable to meet Ao's gaze. Two men lifted the broken girl gently. Though they feared her touch, they dared not be cruel in the face of such strange power. Slowly, they carried her from the shed, through the gathered villagers, toward the distant line of trees that marked the boundary of the forest. As they passed, the crowd parted in silence. Mothers shielded their children's eyes. Old men made signs to ward off evil. Yet beneath the fear, in the hearts of some, a seed of doubt had been planted. For as Ao's golden sap dripped upon the path, life stirred in her wake. Tiny flowers sprang from barren soil. Wilted leaves turned green once more. And though no one dared to speak it aloud, they wondered, what if this curse was not what it seemed? But it was too late. The elders had spoken. At the edge of the forest, Ao was set down gently upon the cool earth. The men retreated quickly, casting wary glances behind them. And there, beneath the towering trees, surrounded by shadows and the hum of unseen life, the girl who had once been called the gentle healer, was left alone, banished, broken, and forever changed. The forest loomed before her, vast, dark, and ancient. Its towering trees stretched high into the sky, their canopies tangled in shadows. To the people of Ntari, it was a place of fear and mystery, spoken of only in hushed tones. They called it the Spirit Wood, where lost souls wandered and strange creatures made their home. None dared enter its depths. But Ao had no choice. Her body broken, her spirit raw with pain, she dragged herself beneath the ancient branches. Each breath was a struggle, each step a battle. The strange vines now wound across her arms and legs, tight and glistening, as if drawing strength from her suffering. Pale green flowers, luminous and trembling, bloomed from her torn skin. Her bare feet brushed the brittle leaves, and where they touched, life stirred. Dead patches of moss grew soft and green. Withered roots pulsed with sudden vitality. The earth seemed to sigh beneath her weight, awakening with each faltering step. Animals began to follow her. First, a pair of small antelope, their eyes wide and curious. Then a sleek black cat, moving silently through the undergrowth. Birds flitted from branch to branch overhead, their songs soft and strange. Ao barely noticed. The fever burned through her veins and exhaustion tugged at her every limb. She stumbled deeper into the forest, seeking a place to rest, to surrender to the darkness pulling at her mind. When at last her legs could carry her no farther, she collapsed at the foot of an ancient tree, its bark thick with age, its roots tangled deep in the earth. The vines across her skin twitched and tightened, blooming anew. The golden sap that seeped from her wounds soaked into the soil, and the ground responded, flowers opening in the moonlight, leaves unfurling as if in greeting. Sleep claimed her, swift and heavy. And in that sleep, a voice came, soft, deep, as though the forest itself spoke. You are not cursed, you are chosen. The words echoed in the depths of her mind, soothing the pain, filling her with strange warmth. Again the voice spoke, richer now, threaded with the pulse of the earth. They sought to destroy you, but the earth remembers kindness. The wounds of the world are many. Through you they shall begin to heal. Ao stirred in her sleep, her breath growing steady, her body humming with an unfamiliar energy. You are of the old blood, the voice whispered. You are life reborn from pain. Fear not what you have become. The visions swirled, images of great trees, of rivers flowing clear, of life rising where once there was only death. When dawn broke, a soft light filtered through the trees. Ao opened her eyes. Though her body still ached, strength pulsed beneath her skin. The vines that laced her arms had grown thicker, their blossoms brighter. Her hair, once tangled and dull, shimmered with new life. She rose slowly, her bare feet sinking into the moss. The creatures of the forest watched her from the shadows, silent, reverent. Wherever she walked, the forest responded. Leaves rustled softly. Flowers opened. The once dead patches of ground bloomed in her wake. It was as if the spirit wood itself recognized her as one of its own. No longer did Ao feel fear. The voice of the forest still echoed in her heart. She was not cursed. She was chosen. And her story was only beginning. Back in the village of Ntari, as the sun rose higher in the sky and the days grew hotter, a strange unease began to creep through the air. It started with small signs easily dismissed. A foul stench drifted from the village well, though the water had always run clear. Chickens that once laid daily stopped altogether. Goats refused to eat, their ribs showing more sharply with each passing day. Then the crops began to wither. Sturdy cassava plants, green just days before, drooped and blackened. The remaining patches of millet shriveled, their heads empty. Even the old baobab tree, a symbol of endurance in the village square, dropped its leaves in great, dry heaps. Panic began to spread among the people. They turned, as they always had, to Mama Koba. Desperate mothers crowded her doorway, thrusting coins and charms into her hands. "My child won't eat," one begged. "The water tastes bitter," cried another. "My husband coughs blood," whispered a third. Mama Koba, who had once relished such authority, now found herself powerless. The old remedies failed. Her brews soured in their pots. Roots that once cured fevers now brought only sickness. Her voice, once strong and commanding, trembled as she reassured the villagers. But behind closed doors her fear grew. Nia too grew restless. Her beauty faded with the stress of each passing day, her skin pale, her eyes rimmed with dark circles. "What is happening, mother?" she hissed one night. "Why do the herbs not work?" Mama Koba could only shake her head. Deep inside, a gnawing suspicion took root, a suspicion she dared not voice. As the sickness worsened, a heavy gloom fell over Ntari. The air itself seemed thick, heavy with unseen rot. Coughs echoed through the village. Children wasted away, their eyes dull. Crops failed completely, leaving the fields cracked and bare. The well water, once the heart of the village, now ran dark and bitter, untouched by any hand. Whispers began to rise among the people. "We are cursed," they said. "It is the forest, it is what was done to the girl." Late one evening, when the village fires burned low and few dared leave their huts, an old seer named Nana Sephu came slowly to the square. Bent with age, her eyes clouded but her voice clear, she stood beneath the withering baobab and called out, "You have brought this upon yourselves." A few villagers crept closer, listening with wary hearts. "The balance has been broken," Nana Sephu declared. "You cast out the one who was not cursed but blessed. The child was a vessel of life. You poured hatred upon her, and now the land drinks that hatred. Until what was broken is made whole, the sickness will not leave." Her words spread quickly. By morning all of Ntari had heard them. Fear deepened, mingled now with guilt and uncertainty. Mama Koba heard too. Her face grew dark with dread, though she spoke no word. Nia wept quietly, unable to sleep, haunted by the memory of what they had done. The village stood on the edge of despair, trapped in a plague of their own making. And somewhere deep in the heart of the spirit wood, the girl they had cast out walked among new life, unaware that the fate of Ntari now lay in her hands. The wind carried whispers through the forest. Whispers of sickness, of dying crops, of a village brought low by its own deeds. The spirits of the trees, the murmuring streams, the rustle of leaves beneath unseen feet, all brought the news to Ao. She stood beneath the vast canopy, her body no longer frail, no longer broken. The vines that once curled timidly across her skin now wound gracefully along her limbs, strong and alive. Blooms of soft green and gold crowned her hair. Her dark eyes gleamed with a light not wholly human. She moved with the grace of something older, deeper, a creature of both flesh and earth. The forest breathed with her and she with it. The ground beneath her feet pulsed with life. Where once she had known only pain, now she felt a fierce, quiet purpose. The voice of the forest echoed still in her heart, "You are chosen." And now the village called to her, not with voices of cruelty or envy but of fear, of need. She did not hesitate. When dawn broke, Ao stepped from the shadows of the spirit wood and began the long walk toward Ntari. Animals followed in her wake, deer, birds, creatures small and swift, drawn to the life that radiated from her. Flowers sprang from her footsteps. The dry, cracked earth softened beneath her tread. As she neared the outskirts of the village, the first to see her was a young boy gathering firewood. He dropped his bundle with a cry and ran toward the center of the village. "She's coming," he shouted. "The girl from the forest, she comes." A wave of fear and hope swept through Ntari. Doors opened. Faces peered out. The sick, the starving, the desperate gathered in the square. And then she appeared, Ao, radiant and terrible in her quiet strength. Part human, part spirit. The wind played through her hair, and the light of the morning sun seemed to follow her. A murmur rose from the crowd. Some fell to their knees at once, tears streaming down their faces. Others gasped, their voices choked with awe. The bravest among them called out, pleading, "Forgive us, help us, save our children." Even the elders, proud and stoic, bowed their heads in shame. From the shadows of her hut, Mama Koba watched with a pale face. Her heart pounded. The girl they had cast out now stood before them, transformed. She dared not meet Ao's gaze. Beside her, Nia trembled, tears in her eyes. "Mother," she whispered, voice breaking. "What have we done?" But Ao said nothing at first. Her dark eyes swept over the village, the withered fields, the sick children, the hopeless faces. The scent of sickness hung thick in the air. And still her heart remained soft. The old pain was there, but so was the voice of the forest, the deep knowing that vengeance would only feed more suffering. Slowly she stepped forward, her bare feet brushing the dusty earth. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but strong. "I came not to punish," she said, "but to heal. If you will have me." A great sob broke from the crowd. Men and women threw themselves to the ground, voices rising in supplication. "Please, Ao, forgive us, save our village." And in that moment Ao chose mercy. For the earth itself had taught her. Life must grow where death has been, healing where wounds are deepest. Without another word, she moved through the square, her hands glowing faintly, her presence bringing a hush. Where her fingers brushed the soil, green shoots unfurled. Where she touched the fevered brows of children, color returned to pale cheeks. The bitter water in the well cleared as her sap-laced vines caressed the stones. And all the while, the villagers watched in reverent silence, awed by the girl they had once scorned. From the shadowed hut, Mama Koba wept bitterly, her shame too great to bear. Nia covered her face, trembling with remorse. But Ao's heart had moved beyond hatred. There was work to be done, life to restore. And this was only the beginning. The sun rose high above Ntari, casting a soft, golden light across the weary village. In the days since Ao's return, a transformation unlike any seen in living memory had begun to take hold. Where once the land had withered and cracked, green shoots now stretched boldly toward the sky. The fields shimmered with life, their leaves rustling in the morning breeze. The well, once foul and bitter, now ran clear and sweet. Ao moved through the village like a living blessing. Her steps were light upon the earth, yet wherever she walked, flowers bloomed in her wake. The sick grew strong beneath her healing touch. The air, once heavy with despair, now pulsed with renewed hope. But not all had yet been made right. Word spread quickly, Ao would speak before the elders, her tormentors present. The people gathered in the square beneath the old baobab, now vibrant with fresh leaves, its mighty branches spreading wide. Ao stood at the heart of the gathering, her form both familiar and transformed. Her skin marked with graceful vines, her hair crowned with faintly glowing blooms. A quiet power radiated from her, soft yet undeniable. Before her knelt Mama Koba and Nia, their heads bowed in shame. The two had been dragged from their hut by the will of the people, their cruel deeds now known to all. No longer did Mama Koba's voice command respect. No longer did Nia's beauty charm eager eyes. They were broken, humbled by guilt and fear. The village watched in tense silence. Would Ao demand justice? Would she call for vengeance? But Ao's gaze was calm as she looked upon them. These women who had once poured hatred upon her, who had left her to die. In a voice that carried across the square, she spoke. "I do not stand here for vengeance. The land teaches mercy. The forest teaches life. Hatred begets only more suffering." Her eyes softened. "You wronged me. You sought to end me. But your deeds cannot chain my heart. I choose a different path." A murmur rippled through the crowd, astonishment, admiration. Ao stepped forward and knelt, placing her hand upon the earth. A warm light pulsed outward. Beneath the villagers' eyes, new life surged across the square. Grasses unfurled, tiny blossoms opened, and a sweet fragrance filled the air. The waters of the well, once merely cleared, now sparkled with crystalline purity. Crops in distant fields sprang high, bearing fruit that swelled overnight. The balance was not only restored but renewed. It was a miracle none could deny. The elders rose, solemn and humbled. Elder Bakery spoke. "For your mercy, Ao, we owe you more than words. We would ask you to lead us, to remain here as our healer, our guide." But Ao shook her head gently. My place is with the forest. I was made part of it. I will not dwell in walls again. But when the land calls, when the people suffer, I will come. A collective breath rose from the gathered villagers. Gratitude and respect mingled in their hearts. As for Mama Koba and Nia, the judgment came swiftly. The villagers, shamed by their own blindness, would no longer shelter such cruelty. The two were cast out, exiled from Ntari, forbidden to return. No one raised a hand against them, no voice cried for blood. But their shame would follow them beyond the village's borders, carried on every whispered word. And so, the reckoning came, not with fire and vengeance but with life, with mercy, with a healing stronger than hate. Ao turned then, her form shimmering in the morning light. Without bitterness, without pride, she walked back toward the forest, her true home now. The animals gathered at her side, the earth seemed to lean toward her passing. From that day on, the people of Ntari spoke her name with reverence. They called her the spirit healer, the guardian of the green. And though she no longer lived among them, the forest remained close, alive with her gift, her touch, her grace. And in the hearts of those who remembered, the lesson endured, that mercy holds greater power than vengeance, and life will always find a way to bloom from even the deepest wounds. Years passed, and the tale of what had happened in Ntari drifted through the land like the soft wind through tall grass. The drought faded from memory, replaced by seasons of bounty and rich harvests. The earth, once cracked and barren, now yielded green and gold. The well, once fouled, bubbled with pure, sweet water. No longer did sickness or hunger haunt the people, and for this they gave thanks not to the gods alone, but to the one whose name had become legend. Ao, the gentle healer, the Ash Maiden. Though she rarely appeared, her presence was felt in every leaf, every bloom, every drop of water. Villagers spoke of glimpsing her from afar, a figure part spirit, part woman, moving gracefully through the forest. Children swore they heard her song in the rustling of the trees, and hunters often returned with tales of unseen hands guiding their way home. The people no longer feared the forest, they revered it, for it had become Ao's realm. Around the fires at night, under the vast sky, the elders would gather the young ones close and tell the story again and again. Beware envy, they would begin, their voices low and steady. For it can twist even the kindest heart into something bitter and cruel. And remember Ao, the girl who bloomed from pain. They spoke of her gentleness, her strange gift that healed the sick and made the earth thrive. They told of the cruelty she suffered at the hands of her own kin, of the terrible night when hot ashes had been poured upon her, and of the miracle that followed, how vines and blossoms had grown from her wounds, how life had answered hatred not with death, but with beauty. And always they ended with the same truth: Ao had chosen mercy. No vengeance. No bitterness. Only healing. Deep within the heart of the spirit wood, where few dared tread, stood a tree unlike any other. Tall and wide, its bark shimmered faintly as though silver had seeped into its roots. Its branches spread like arms, heavy with luminous blossoms that glowed with a soft, golden light, petals said to be born from Ao's own blood, her own tears. It was called the Ash Maiden's tree. Legends claimed that a single petal from its blooms could heal the gravest wound, cure the cruelest sickness, even mend a heart broken by grief. But no one dared approach with greed or selfishness, for all knew the cost from which those blossoms had grown. Instead, villagers would leave small offerings beneath its roots, flowers, woven garlands, whispered prayers of thanks. And so the tale lived on, passed from mother to child, from elder to youth, a story of cruelty and kindness, of suffering transformed into life. It became more than just legend, it became wisdom. Ao's spirit remained in the forest, in the tree, in the very breath of the earth. And in the hearts of the people of Ntari, the lesson endured: that mercy holds greater power than vengeance. That even from the blackest ashes new life can bloom. And that kindness, once given freely, can heal not just the wounded, but the world itself.